If you caught last week's video tutorial, you'll know we began a discussion about back contour shaping on a pattern with a back yoke. Now in that video, I shared a method of removing the yoke seam so that you could better understand how to make a standard rounded back adjustment. Now this week, I wanted to talk about the best position for a yoke seam line and how to customize it for your body. I'm Alexandra Morgan from In-House Patterns and In-House Pattern Studio. Let's start by talking a bit more about back yoke styling. Now the back yoke is a great styling choice when you have a rounded back because it allows you to shape the back by creating an invisible dart inside the yoke seam. Now the invisible dart hidden in the seam has the ability to give you a more refined fit. But like a dart, the styling will work best if the yoke seam is addressing the most prominent area of the back. If the yoke seam is too high or too low, you may find that you are not achieving the fit that you hope for. Now, the most prominent area of the back spinal curve usually occurs between 2.5 and 5 inches below the base of neck. So that's about 6 to 13 centimeters. Now on someone with a relatively standard spinal curve, placing the yoke seam anywhere between these points will achieve an acceptable fit. However, if you have a more prominent curve in one specific area, you will achieve better back fit if the seam line of the yoke is near the apex of that curve. Now in the Lila pattern, the back yoke seam is located between 2 3/4 and 3 1/4 inch from the base of neck, of course depending on the size that you choose. Now if you need to move this position, you can remove the yoke seam and make your rounded back adjustment as I showed you last week, and then choose the position of the yoke seam that will work best for your body. Let me show you how to do that. Okay, so just to get started, this is the point where I have actually made a rounded back adjustment to the back of the pattern of the Lila top after I've eliminated the yoke seam. So most likely you are probably starting from this point. So I just wanted to quickly show you this pattern after it's been altered for a rounded back. Now again, if you want to get to this point, just watch last week's video. It will give you all the information you need. Now as I mentioned previously as well, is the style line for the Lila pattern yoke is actually located approximately 2 3/4 to 3 1/4 inches below the base of neck. So when I say the base of neck, I mean the body measurement. And I have a little indication here that this particular neckline is actually sitting a 1/2 inch or 1.3 centimeters below the natural base of neck of the body. So this tells you this particular size 2 pattern. It has a back yoke seam line position based on the design of just over 2 3/4 inch. So here's the thing, if you find that this particular yoke seam line position is not the correct position for you, then you can easily move that line by going from this particular alteration, and we can actually just decide exactly where we want that yoke seam line to be. Now what I want you to know is that I'm going to show you on a clean sheet of paper just so all the lines don't get confusing. So I'm just going to kind of put this one aside, and we're going to start again with the kind of a fresh sheet. All you need to do is from this point, after you've made your rounded back adjustment, you can easily just predetermine exactly where you want that yoke seam line to be. Now, how you decide is basically you're going to choose where the roundest part of your back is. So along your spine, exactly how far from the center back neck is the kind of the greatest curvature in your spine. And you're just going to use that as a guess and decide on the yoke seam line position that you want to take. So I'm going to assume that it is about 1/2 inch or so above the cross back line here, or if you want to say it another way, the new yoke seam line is actually going to be 4 and let's say 4 1/4 from the base of the natural neckline here. So I'm just going to make a cross mark here at that position. So just assuming that that's where the greatest amount of roundness that you have in the back. When I start there, I'm going to just draw a perpendicular line from center back, and it's going to be parallel also to the across back line, so you can use these as guidelines as well. And I'm going to draw it just, about 2/3 of the way. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this dart leg that I created, and I'm just going to extend it down in order to meet that new line. So I'm just going to go right along that dart leg, however it ended up being. This is the best one to use, probably the one that's closest to the neckline, but it doesn't really matter to any great extent. I like to use this one as the point. So you're going to find that intersection point right there. And what you're going to do is slash along that line, and you're going to slash along that line to create a pivot point right there. Now, once I have my pivot point prepared, it's very easy for me to just close my dart volume. So what you're going to do here is basically just make sure those dart legs will meet each other again at the seam line of that shoulder seam. So there might be a section here that is overlapping slightly. Don't be concerned about that. Just close the dart so that those seam line edges meet once again. You don't want to overlap in this area. You just want to remove that dart volume that you added. Now from this point, all you need to do is use this straight line, and you're going to continue it straight down. So following along this line, the original slash line, you're just going to go straight out to the armhole. Now that you have that seam line, you can cut the yoke and the back apart again. And there you have your back yoke and your back. Your seam line is moved from this position to this position. Now you just have to do a little bit of fine tuning in order to make things all smooth and work together. And all you need to do is kind of knock off any corner that you might have here. So just making that a nice smooth line. And then you are going to add your seam allowances, because these are your actual seam lines, which means you have to add some paper to be able to add your 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. The other thing you're going to do is make sure that you walk your pattern to make sure that you have not knocked off too much measurement off of this particular kind of curvature that you created here. So when you're doing that, you can just walk your pattern piece before you add your seam allowances and make sure that you have not knocked off too much measurement. And you can see here that this is going to work just fine. We're going to come back and I will show you the seam allowances added. So you can see now I've added the seam allowances here. The other thing that I've added here are notches. Since this is the back pattern piece, you want to make sure that there's a double notch that will show you how to join the yoke to the bodice part of the back. Now I've just chosen arbitrarily approximately 3 inches from the center back line, and then the second notch is a 1/2 inch away. You're going to want to make sure that matches on both the yoke and the back bodice piece. And again, you always want to double check your pattern work. Make sure that you walk your seam lines to make sure that you have a pattern that's going to stitch together beautifully. Now that you know how to eliminate and move a yoke seam, you can refine the back contour shaping of any pattern to better suit your shape. Let me know if you found this tutorial helpful. You can always leave a comment somewhere on this page. I'll chat with you soon. Bye for now.